all, Client Success is not just a content provider, right? We do produce a lot of great content. So many of you guys come to these boot camps, you come to our other webinars, and we are thrilled to have and to host you. But do remember, we are a customer success management software as well. So we are a CSP. We help our customers manage from new to renew, that entire post-initial sales life cycle. So everything from how you segment your customers, how you manage your processes, managing your health, managing your automations, everything that you want to do in one simple and powerful solution. So if you're not familiar with Client Success and you're on the market for a CSP, a customer success management platform, please head over to clientsuccess.com and check us out, request a demo. If you'd like to pick my brain, I'm always happy to speak with folks too. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or if you have my email address, you can reach me there too. And I'm happy to speak to you about the ways that I use Client Success at Client Success. And if you do have a solution in place and it's just not meeting your needs today, please explore us, see if we could be a possible fit. Either way, let's jump right to it. So today's topic, as I mentioned, today is session 3 in a 4-part series. So after today, we only have one left. Super sad. So hopefully you'll be able to make it next week as well. For today's series session, we're going to be talking about how you use churn and risk data to drive your new strategy. So we've talked about like 2 different things that I've covered in this series, right? We've talked about how you might want to move from a full stack CSM model, right, where your CSMs are doing everything from new to renew, to breaking out some of those specialty roles, like maybe an onboarding manager, renewal specialist, account management, professional services, onboarding, all of those things. Then last week, we talked about how do we create scaled programs that are going to help you leverage the resources that you have in your team, operate more effectively and efficiently, more proactively to support all of your customers. Now, this week, we're going to talk about how do you use data to determine that strategy? Because quite frankly, this is what I used at Client Success to figure out what are some of the things that I need to focus on. So everything should start with data, right? You'll hear us all the time talk about making data-driven decisions. Well, this probably should have been session 1 in this 4-part series. I realize that now, but it's session 3. And we're going to talk about how do we use that data to determine what are the things or initiatives you should be focusing on in your organization. So we're going to get started now. I think we've got most of who will be joining us, so I feel comfortable moving forward. We're going to jump right in. Before we do, allow me to introduce myself for those of you who are just joining. My name is Kristi Faltorusso. I'm currently the Chief Customer Officer at Client Success. I oversee our entire post-initial sales team. That's our customer success services and support organizations, as well as lead content initiatives like our CS Leadership Bootcamp series. So thrilled to be here today, thrilled to jump into this topic. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, I always like to just set the stage, right? Before we get into all the goodies, want to just make sure that we know what we're talking about, why we're talking about it, why it's important. So while knowing why your customers churn is important, knowing why your customers stay is critical. Now, I think I talked about this a little bit in our first session in this series, but talked about like why, we always pay attention to why customers are at risk or why our customers are churning. And some of that comes top down, right? Like whether your board's asking it or your CEO is asking it, you've got a lot of pressure to explain what's happening, right? Why the bleed? Why are customers leaving? Where are they going? What's happening? How could we prevent it? But we also need to focus on like kind of flipping that on its head and talking about why your customers stay. Because if we know why your customers stay, we can emulate that, right? It'll help us figure out a better ICP. It'll figure out better programs, initiatives, what part of the products are really sticky. There is a wealth of data in understanding why your customers stay. So while the title of my series session today was talking about the risk and the churn data, you're going to see that I also really emphasize the importance of that stickiness, that value that your customers are getting, the reason why they renew, the reason why they grow with you, the reasons why they have been with you for years, because that information that lives in those customers is priceless. And that should also be a part of our strategy. Now, if we do more of that, guess what? We'll likely have less customers leaving. So why I use the risk data and the kind of staying data, the renewing data there, is because both our risk factors and success factors play a big part, and they should actually be telling 2 sides of the same story. And so we're going to talk about that because if we know one, we should be figuring out the other, and that should be driving our programs forward. So I always say that early risk indicators can help you anticipate if your customers may not succeed, right? And this is important in influencing your strategic decisions. So it's important to get ahead of that. I know a lot of us focus on lagging indicators because sometimes it's how we're reporting on things. And we're going to get into so many examples. I'm going to unpack this and why certain lagging indicators really aren't lagging indicators, or why certain leading indicators are not the leading indicators, and make sure that we're all just working off of the same sheet of music. But this is really important because we've spent a lot of time just analyzing all the information about our customers, right? From day one, what was their sales process look like? Like why did they come on board? What was their close experience? What did onboarding look like? Were there points of friction? Did we get them onboarded seamlessly? How long did it take? Right? All the way through how long before they got their first win or started to see value? How engaged are we in the partnership? Do we have access to leadership, right? All of this early information actually is going to tell me whether or not, probably from day one, what is the likelihood or what is the success probability of this individual customer. Now, if we can find themes here, which is what we're going to look for, we can use that information to guide our strategy. Now, of course, listen, no strategy that we can focus on is going to cover every single customer. We're going to be focusing on the 80. Understand that there's probably 20% of our customers that some of the work that we do won't have an impact on, but that's okay. That's to be expected. We can't please everyone, and we can't have a million priorities. That's not how it works, right? You can only have a couple priorities, or else you have no priorities. So making sure that you have access to this data is actually where it starts. Now, I'll tell you, interestingly enough, the more leaders I speak to who tell me that they just don't have access to good, clean, accurate, and current data is mind-boggling. And if you think that you're in a small company and that's your experience, and that, of course, as a big company, you must have all of this, I will tell you, bad data is company size agnostic. I talked to some really, really small organizations where their data is a mess. And I'm like, okay, well, you got some time, you're early, let's get it cleaned up. But I talked to large organizations and teams, massive teams. And I'm like, wait, how are you guys, how does this work? Right? Because they don't have access to all the data in one place where they can use it strategically to guide the direction of their organization. So again, bad data, it's company agnostic. Every type of company has this situation. But so I'm going to urge you that if you don't feel like you've got a good handle on your data, make that a priority, because we can't do any of this if we don't have clean, accurate, and current data. So let's just talk about symptoms versus root cause, because this actually is going to play a part to how we analyze a lot of the data that we use to figure out how I got to this place of like, okay, here's some of the things that I needed to focus on. So we talk about like symptoms versus root cause. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here, right? The symptoms are the visible indications that there's an issue, where the root cause is the underlying reason behind the symptoms. Right? I have the sniffles. I don't have the sniffles. I have a cold, right? There's something wrong with me. And so being able to differentiate the two and make sure that we're classifying them correctly is really important. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time here because I want to get to some good examples. So when I start to see companies start to bucket churn or risk reasons, right? What I don't see a lot of is a lot of focus on the root causes. I see a lot of emphasis around the symptoms, right? Like they've got poor adoption, or there's lack of engagement. They won't return my emails. They don't show up for my calls. They've ghosted me, or I've got a detractor NPS. All of a sudden now they think that's the issue. That your customer told you they're not renewing. Those are your symptoms, guys. That's what's happened because something else has occurred. So I need us to stop focusing on the symptoms, and we've got to figure out what some of those root causes are. So when I talk to my team, we're focusing on so few items because we're really focused on the root causes. Now, I know there could be a billion symptoms, right? Think about it, you have the flu, you might have a fever, you might have a cough, you might have the chills, right? From one root cause, you could have a ton of symptoms. And I feel like that's where we get lost in our data, is we see all of these symptoms and we start to just get overwhelmed by how many things are popping up, right? Oh, we had executive turnover, or there was M&A, or there was this or that. Those are symptoms, guys. Those are not the root causes. We need to spend more time figuring out what is the root cause? How did we get there? And so when I start to think about some root causes, and these are just a few examples to just, again, tie the storyline here together, but it's going to be lack of perceived value, could be state of the business, poor user experience, could be product related, lack of change management, Guys, you could have the best product in the world. You could have a great strategy behind it. But if your main points of context, especially if you're doing a train the trader model, if they don't know how to drive change in their organization and you're not supporting them as kind of like a facilitator or change agent, it doesn't matter. Your technology is never going to adopt it in a way that they're really going to be able to standardize their processes on it and get that real value from it. So listen, there's going to be a ton of these types of things that will pop up. And I just want to make sure that as you're analyzing your data, you're classifying these things the right way. Okay, because sometimes we put them into the wrong buckets and we start solving for the wrong problems. And that's why the categorization of these things is so critical. So I'm going to show you, these are some screenshots. These are from a demo account. So don't worry, I'm not showing you any of my proprietary client success data. But these are some screenshots that we have access to from a part of our product in client success called our Pulse Report. Now, of course, you guys can get this data from your own solutions, whether you're using a CRM or if you've got a really fancy Excel spreadsheet. Remember, Excel is the most powerful tool in the world. But what this does is it allows me to very easily identify what are some of the reasons why our customers are at risk. Now, this one in particular is focused on risk. So this is analyzing risk reasons. So here I might be saying, okay, support. Maybe there's customer communication issues, business viability, right? During COVID, that was a big category because so many companies were closing their doors or they couldn't sustain. They had to cut back budgets, cut headcount, all kinds of things. Relationship, we do see people turn over a lot, especially I would say over the past year. And I think in last week's session, I showed you guys some data around how many people will be changing jobs, I think, or changed jobs last year. So from a relationship standpoint, how difficult is it when we have to rebuild and resell into a new stakeholder? Whether there is issues with professional services or poor onboarding, or there was a billing mishap. Gosh, guys, you don't even know how many times I hear companies that like struggle with billing processes. Product issues. Maybe your product is super buggy. Maybe you have not innovated fast enough, right? There's a pace of velocity that your customers are counting on. So this to be said, this is just a snapshot of some examples that we might be capturing. Again, this is not our data. This is from a demo environment, but this is the type of report that I'm able to access in client success that tells me, okay, here's the buckets of what's going on. Now, in our platform, the way that we roll it up is kind of under leadership, right? So I've got a whole bunch of risk reasons that fold up under sales, under product, under customer success, under finance, right? So I have the ability to really quickly drill down into those categories and then start to see. So in our platform, actually, all of these boxes you can kind of click down into and see those subcategorizations. The next one here, I also have this for our success factors. Now, remember, I told you, it is great to analyze why your customers are at risk or why your customers are churning. It is equally, and maybe I can defend saying more important to know why your customers stay, right? And so I want to know, why are my customers successful? What are the patterns? What are the things that they love about us? So in this case, I could see customer communication. Maybe it's the relationship. Now you see the boxes here on the same different things are bigger, different, right? Could be they had a great onboarding experience. They have, it's been great from an education standpoint. We're teaching them, we're training them, we're enabling them. Business viability. Maybe these customers, their business is thriving. I will tell you just thematically, if you were in the security space, just crushing it. I saw so many companies where I'm like, okay, great. You guys are onto something. So maybe their business is growing. So these are the types of things I want to also be able to analyze. So I can start to see, okay, you know what? My customers that are the most successful, they're adopting the platform. We've got strong engagement. We've got great relationships. They've had a very successful onboarding. We know that their business categories or the industries they operate in, they're thriving in this market. So these data points, along with the risk data points, actually help me see, again, remember I said like the 2 pages, same book, right? I get to see why my customers are leaving and why they're staying, and actually get to start to see, okay, well, are there patterns here, right? Am I seeing the opposite? So are my customers leaving because they don't have strength in these areas, or vice versa? So these are really interesting data points for me to use. And like I said, this is data that I have accessible in client success because we track all of our engagements with our customers. And so when we do, we categorize it, right? So every time we interact with a customer in client success, we're tracking what we call their pulse. And that's why you see in the top corner, it says current pulse reasons. We track their pulse. And when we do track their pulse, we give reason codes. We give risk reasons and success factors. So we say, here are some reasons why this customer might be at risk or what issues might be arising. And then here's some reasons why this customer is seeing success with the partnership. That ability to use that data, which we collect so often, allows me to generate these types of reports. So again, I do have the luxury of using our solution to do this. But again, if you guys are engaging with your customers, tag those engagements. The same principles apply. When you're having those interactions with your customers, note, what are some of the issues that are coming up? Or what are the things that you're hearing that are allowing you to see patterns of strength and behavior and adoption and change and value realization? And start to tag those engagements so you can come up with a report like this yourself. Like I said, we have the luxury of using Client Success, which generates all of these things for us based off of our pulse reports. But that's not the value prop here. The value prop is having insight to this. So if you are not capturing this type of information, I would definitely urge you to do so. A lot of folks I know, they're just capturing the engagements with their customers, right? Yep, we spoke to them. Great. And here's the notes from our meeting, and it was great. Awesome. But just connecting with them doesn't tell me the story. There's probably a wealth of notes there that are going underanalyzed, unless you're using solutions that have AI and that are, analyzing it for you, coming up with themes and maybe calling these things out for you automatically. You have to be able to track this stuff so you can have these different types of data points. They're extremely powerful, especially from a reporting standpoint. Now, I show you these two things because this is the type of data that I'm using when I'm analyzing this, right? I said I want to go look at all of my risk reasons, all of my success factors. Now, I have these two reports also for why my customers renew and why my customers churn. So every time a customer leaves, I am tagging it with risk and success factors, right? Like maybe that customer loved us. They were getting a ton of value from our product, but they went through an M&A and the company that acquired them wants to consolidate their tech stack. Let me just tell you that it's a very popular use case. It happens all the time. I don't know if it's a use case. It's an outcome. And so we'll often find that, our customers aren't churning because of anything we could have controlled. They were acquired. And as a result of that acquisition, that parent company is standardizing their tech stack, or they're consolidating, or they're cutting their budgets, or guess what? They just acquired them for their customers and they're doing away with everything else. The renewal reasons are also important, right? Like, why is this customer signing a multi-year renewal? Why are they staying? Every time we are capturing this information, it's going to be data points that we can use in the future. When you have enough of that, you can start to uncover themes and patterns, and that's what we're looking for. And so that's my next slide, right? So you've got to look for themes. It's not enough to say, okay, great, in each individual situation, right? Like this customer is happy because of this, and they're mad because of this, and they love this about us, and they hate this about our product. That's not helpful. But when you aggregate all of this data together, right, you have that aggregation, you can pull these types of reports. I can very easily see what are the top 3 reasons my customers go, and what are the top 3 reasons my customers stay. Those are the types of themes and the patterns that I'm looking for when I analyze this data, right? What are the staying reasons that are influencing the most amount of logos? What are the staying reasons that are influencing the most amount of revenue? And the same side, what are the risk reasons that are impacting the most amount of revenue or the most amount of logos, right? And don't forget, you have to analyze it from both sides. I know leadership, of course, we want to look at the dollars. It's a dollars game for us. But if you're not looking at the number of customers too, you're missing a big piece of information. So I would highly urge you to not only look at the revenue story, but also look at the logo story. Because what you might find is other things like, you know what? We cannot retain our small customers. Our product does not work for them. We cannot support them properly, right? Even though we think we're just going to keep selling more because it's just easier to make it up that way, maybe those aren't the right ICP for you. Maybe on the flip side, maybe your product doesn't scale to the enterprise. Maybe you're missing really core functionality that doesn't support use cases when a company gets to a certain level of sophistication or maturation. These are things that are really critical for each of you to know as leaders. And if you are driving or designing strategy without this information, you might not be doing things the right way. And I'm going to go as far as saying that, because if we are not making data-driven decisions, we are not doing the right way. We cannot be making hunches about this stuff. We really do have to be thoughtful about not only collecting all of the data, but how we can use it over time. So what should we be looking for, right? So obviously I had a wealth of information here, and this was obviously by no means the only things I looked at. I just wanted to show you these types of charts, because these visualizations and these data points were super critical for me. But obviously we know there is a ton of information that we should have about our customers, right? Maybe we find out that there's, every customer that uses one specific piece of that functionality. And when they use it a certain amount of times, or they have a certain amount of adopters, they're going to stay. They get a ton of value. They love it. Gold, right? There's so much information that we should be digging through. Go find your data. So some of the things that I looked for, right? What are the top 3 risk reasons impacting the most amount of my customers, right? Thematically, like, what are those reasons? Now, I will tell you, I did bucket these things out because I wanted to say, what are things that are within my control? When I say that, I'm our chief customer officer. I'm not the product designer, developer, right? I can only influence with my team's strategy so much. So when I was looking at this, I'm kind of saying controllable and uncontrollable, not for us as a company, but for me as a leader. What things should I be strategizing around? What things should I be focused on with my team as we're building out our processes, as we're building our infrastructure? Now, of course, all the information that we have in here about the product, that gets fed to our product team. So that does influence our roadmap. It does influence things that we're prioritizing. So all of this information is gold. But for me specifically, how I was using it, I want to know, what could we be doing differently or better, or what are the types of programs I could be designing or deploying with my team to avoid some of this, right? Now, top risk reasons, we're going to get to some of the ones that I found, but I think that would be a good place to start. Are there themes amongst leading indicators? Now, I talked about the difference between a leading indicator or a lagging indicator, right? The symptoms versus the root cause. Being able to differentiate those and be able to drill down into those is going to be really important. So you have to be able to understand, what are the things upstream that we can fix? Because when you focus on the reasons why your customers are leaving, things are so far gone. We are solving for the wrong things. So if I know that, like, a leading indicator might be, you know what, we didn't have the executive at the kickoff and they weren't the one driving the strategy. So when we built and configured our solution, it wasn't what they had in mind and it didn't align. And so they weren't really getting the value that that leader had hoped they would. Okay, that's a leading indicator. If all of a sudden I find out missing that executive at our kickoff, guess what? I'm never going to kick off without that executive in that meeting. I'm solving for something that is a leading indicator. So what are the themes that you're seeing there? Break factors into 2 buckets, the controllable and uncontrollable. Like I said, this is what I did. Now, you can do it company-wide, because things that are controllable could be your product. It could be your programs, could be your team, could be how you onboard, right? It could be all the things that are within your control. And then you have things that are uncontrollable, right? The company goes bankrupt, right? That's sad. It happens. That's something that's outside of your control. In some organizations, M&A, I will tell you, based on our ICP, if my customers get acquired, usually they are the companies being acquired. They're not usually the ones doing the acquiring. And in that case, honestly, it's very tough, because the parent company or whoever has acquired them is making strategic decisions to either hold off and assess the tech stack, or they're going to consolidate, or they're making other recommendations, or there's, additional tools and stuff. So it's just being able to kind of segment this information into those 2 buckets has really helped me at least understand, okay, where should I be focusing my attention? Because what would have real impact? Because if I'm trying to tackle the things that are uncontrollable, well, I'm just spinning my wheels, right? I'm not going to see any change. The next thing is, what factors can be addressed now that will have impact on churn or retention in 6 months? Because the other thing is I know as a leader, right, we've got to drive change and impact today. It's always a sense of urgency. And if you guys are not operating with a sense of urgency, you probably got to check yourself a little bit there. I'm always trying to move fast, because I don't have, another day. I don't have another month. I don't have another year. If I keep waiting to do things, right, my churn is not going to get better. My retention is not going to improve, expansion, all of these things. So I got to focus on, what can I do today that will drive impact for tomorrow? That is kind of my mindset when I design any of the things I'm doing. What are the things that I can do that will start to shift things for us? I can't look at things always that are going to, fix things 2 years from now. Right? Of course, maybe thematically, yes, if I start doing these things, it will have long-term impact, but sometimes we do have to solve for this immediate challenge that we have, especially if you do have churn issues. So for me, I'm looking at what can I address kind of today that will fix this? And then what's the one thing that we can do that will change retention? Now, if you notice that I didn't put the emphasis on churn, I said retention, right? So I want to focus on why are my customers staying and creating more moments and more experiences and more customers that want to stay. So what is that one thing that all of my customers who renew, what's the one thing that they have in common? So I try to spend a lot of time just trying to figure that out. And obviously it changes and there's a lot of volatility there and a lot of things that shift and move. But usually there's like one or two things that I can find that I'm like, oh, okay. It's an interwoven theme that says all my customers that stay, they do this one thing. Try to find that one thing. That's been really eye-opening for us. And, for us, it's actually specific parts of our product that we know that are super sticky. And when they are adopted, when they are embedded into workflows, I'll tell you, it's one part of our product that our customers, every single customer I talk to, whether they like us or hate us, most of them love us, they come back and they say, I cannot live without X. And it's just one part of our product that they just love. It cannot be replicated. They can't find it in any other solution. And so for me, if I know that, right, if that is a sticky point for my customers, I want to make sure that every single one of my customers is using that thing. It's deeply embedded into their organization. So can you find the one thing that will help make sure that your customers stay? Now, of course, you can go and analyze your data and come up with your own questions. Again, I'm giving you examples of things that I looked for that were really helpful for me in uncovering what I should focus on, because ultimately all the programs that I've designed came out of these types of views, came out of this data that I was analyzing. So what did I find? So when I was going through all of our data, I said, okay, great. Sometimes it's this lack of perceived value. We've got a challenge here where customers they can't get to a point where they're like, you know what? Yes, we've been wildly successful with this. And I'll tell you, like the leading indicators of this is, we've got folks that maybe purchase this software without a clear strategy or without clear goals in mind, right? So they have this overarching idea of like what they want it to do, but not the outcomes that they're driving. And so if we're only focusing on like the activities and the actions and not the outcomes, right, there's a disconnect from value. The next one was low adoption and change management. What I found is that a lot of buyers for us aren't proficient or they're not experts in change management. Guess what? They're not. They are leaders in specific roles that they're in. So maybe change management is something we had to aid them in. And how can we do that? And how can we help facilitate adoption? For us, like many of the organizations out there, we do have a bit of a train the trainer model. We're working with the people like our leaders and our admins and the folks that are, helping design the strategy that's embedded into our solution. And we're training them, but we are relying on them to go and train their teams. And now, if they don't know how to do that, or if they don't know how to drive change management in their organization, or there's a disconnect, they don't know the product as well, they're unaware of certain features or functionality, and things go unused and value is not perceived from those things because they're not using them. How do I go and address that? And last thing is integrations and data consolidation. I will tell you guys, one huge thing that I have learned, and not just my current role, but in a lot of organizations, the more integrated your solution is, whether that be into other technology or technology being flown into your product, the stickier it is. So integrations for me has always been this like, whoa, okay, the more integrations I can get, the better off we're going to be, because the more embedded we are into their operating model. So I love to look at these points. And so when these kind of popped up to me based off of the data that I reviewed, I said, okay, great. If lack of perceived value is something I have to focus on, then let's go upstream. And so what can I do here? So we're going to focus on how do we coach our customers on designing and defining their goals, that value outcome that they need to see. So I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this because I will tell you, and I'm sure a lot of you can also agree that when you're having conversations with your customers about goals, it's a challenge. If you ask your customers, how are you defining success with a partnership? How are you defining success with our product? You're not going to get a SMART goal. You're not going to get something super specific. It makes it difficult to manage, to track, and to obviously achieve. So for me, I said, okay, great. If this is a gap, let's coach our customers. Let's spend more time with them up front on designing what those goals and that value looks like. So we really have a path to getting there. I think we've kind of let our customers tell us what they were perceiving as value, and it wasn't really well defined and well scoped. And so we'd kind of go through this motion of like, okay, great, we'll get it at some point, and then we don't, and then it's like, oh, we didn't get what we needed. So up front, we want to address that. Like, almost don't even move on to onboarding until we've really got that solidified. The other thing is onboarding. Now, if I'm going to go as far as to focus so much of my time and attention on the goals, well, maybe I want to redesign my onboarding. So many organizations, and I can tell you this as a consumer of a lot of technology, when I get trained on other products, it's going through the motions of feature and functionality. Nobody is prescriptively saying, Kristi, tell me what it is that you're trying to solve for. Great. We're only going to focus on that and designing this product for you to achieve that specific thing. When we're done with that, we'll move on to the next things. I've never been through an onboarding experience that was maniacally focused on helping me just get to that goal. It's always like, here's all these 100 different things that we're going to start to play with, and I'm going to show you all these things, and you'll turn these little dials, a little bit of everything, and then all of a sudden, I don't remember any of it, and I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I'm not clear on how I'm going to achieve value from it, right? I know I can do a bunch of things, and that's cool, but are those the right things for me to get to my goal? So I want to focus upstream on those things. The next thing with this low adoption and change management, well, what can I do there? So we've decided I'm going to double down on these webinar trainings to give us access to end users. I want to take the responsibility away from the trainers and say, you know what? We're going to help you. Because guess what? I will tell you, and for those of you who are CSMs, which I assume a lot of you are, if you're a CSM, how long does it take you to learn everything about your product? I paused for effect, but I'm confident here that you're all thinking, probably at least a year before you felt really, really, really well-versed in your product. At least a year. You can't expect to go and train your customers for, 8, 12 weeks and think that they're an expert and they can now train their end users or their teams on your product. If that is the expectation, we're doing it wrong. Even with all the portals and the content and all this stuff. So what can we do to better help our main points of contacts, right? These trainers, how can we help them? So we're launching all new programs to have access to the end users, because I am not sitting here expecting everyone to know everything about our product. I'm the product expert. My team are product experts. Let us take that responsibility and that burden and help our customers. How can we do that at scale? Webinar trainings. Now, the other thing that I have found is, let's stop talking about our product. I've also found that my customers need help outside of client success. They need understandings of customer success best practices. They want to learn how to drive change in their organizations. Well, guess what? I'm going to go launch workshops that are just going to help educate and enable leaders on things that are agnostic of our platform. They have nothing to do with client success, have everything to do with them in their seats and their roles and helping them be the best leaders, and then allow my technology to support them. But I got to help them differently. And it can't just be feature, function, product focused, guys. So if you're thinking about how you can help your customers, is there a way to do that beyond your solution? So those are types of things I'm going to go do to kind of tackle this low adoption and change management issue. Then this integration and data consolidation. Well, we're launching things like support office hours. We're leaning in with things like our paid services. We're putting a ton of resources early in onboarding to just help integrate all of our systems with our customers. We're going to actually have just different sessions that are just solely focused on that until they're getting all their data in the platform and we know that it's embedded well, or making sure that our data is going where it needs to go. If they want it to go into other systems, push pull, right? Let's figure it out. I want to make sure that the data is accurate and flowing into all of the tools, systems, platforms that they need it to, whether it's ours or another place. Because that integration and that data consolidation is really what's going to help your teams run their business. So it's just something we've got to figure out. So I'm running a bunch of programs here that will support that. So what you see here is that I found 3 things. Now, these 3 things will not solve all of my problems. I cannot confidently say that if I do these 3 things, that I will never see another customer churn, or that all my customers will stay, or that all my customers will grow. Absolutely not. Do I think thematically, though, if I focus on these 3 things based on all the data I analyzed, will it have meaningful impact? Absolutely. Now, I also didn't just use the data. I spoke to my customers, and I've mentioned this in different sessions too. I don't make assumptions. I don't just rely on the data. I'm a hear it from the horse's mouth kind of gal. I want to go speak to my customers and I want to go ask them, Am I focusing on the right things? Do these seem like the areas of opportunity for you and your team? If I deploy these programs, will you take advantage of them? Will these help you? Will they help your team? Will you get more value from the partnership? And every time I had that conversation, it was a yes. So I got my customers to validate this for me. And I said, I use the data. Here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm feeling. Does this feel accurate to you? And did these programs, does that solve for it? Now, again, I'm not trying to solve all their problems, but can I solve some? I hope so. And they are validating that for me. So these are the things that I'm going to move forward with. So like I said, this is how I was able to use some of the why my customers stay and why my customers leave, or why they're at risk, or why they're successful, to help me figure out where I need to focus my attention. Because I will tell you, customers who saw real value, they stayed. Customers where we were fully embedded into their teams and their teams were in our platform all day, every day, using it very strategically, they stayed. Our teams where the data was so well integrated into their business, whether it was in Slack or their CRM or vice versa, pulling things in, they stayed. So like I said, it's important to know why your customers leave, but it's also important to know why they stay. So I'm solving for the right things. So if I know that these three things also are why my customers stay, I also know that there are three things that are proposing, or I guess causing risk in my book, and I solve for them, I should be driving more staying and less going. That's my goal. So let's talk a little bit about these programs. So the first one I wanted to focus on was this goal coaching and onboarding. So what I started to realize here, and I'm going to kind of walk you through like what I learned so you understand why I thought it was important to create some programs around this. My customers struggled to articulate specific SMART goals, right? It was so difficult for them. In fact, I actually go back to my CSMs and I go review the goals that they capture from our kickoff meetings. And I'm like, what is that? Oh, that's the goal that our customer gave us. I'm like, okay, well, why did we move on? Because that is not a SMART goal. It's not even a SM goal, right? Didn't even do the S and the M. Give me something. It's gotta meet all that criteria, because if not, can we work with that? So that was the biggest challenge we had. I would say like 1 in every 100 customers came in with a clear SMART goal and said, this is how we're measuring success. This is how I will know that your solution has been successful with our business and helping us drive our outcomes. The next one here, onboarding focused on the adoption of technology and not the solution of a pain or value realization. And I get that, right? We so often want to make sure that we're introducing the entire scope of our platforms to our customers so that they know what to do, so they know how to use it, they know what's available. And then they get a sense of like, can you independently use this now? Because I've shown you all the things. But at the end of the day, again, how overwhelming is it for some of your products? And I've seen some of these solutions out there. They are so robust. How could I possibly walk away from onboarding where you introduced me to everything and not feel overwhelmed? So instead, should we be thinking about how we break down onboarding into small programs, like these little micro programs that just focus on helping them achieve this one goal? Train the trainer management, that just didn't work for us, right? So if we are focusing on just train the trainer and not having access to end users, whether it is the existing product that they had access to or when we innovated, it was really difficult to ensure that our end users really knew the full scope of the value that they could be driving. What were the workflows? And I'll tell you something, the more important thing that was missing is the why, right? Think about if you're being led by somebody and they're just like, you have to use this technology to do these things, but you don't know why. You don't know the value to you as the end user. Well, we found that there was a big disconnect there too. And so teams would get frustrated because they just feel like their leaders are like more carrot, more stick than carrot. And it's like, just go do these things. But why am I doing these things? How will doing these things change the business? We wanted to help educate them. So the end users equally bought in as the folks that purchased our solution. And the last one is that I just kind of talked about, right? That adoption, it would dwindle when the end users don't have that clear, like, what's in it for me? Right? Why am I doing this? How is this helping me do my job? Why is my life better because of this? So those were some of the things that I was like, wow, okay, I got to figure out how to solve for this, because these were patterns that I would see. And I'm like, okay, these are impacting our customers' ability to get value, right? We're not sticky end users. We've got to help them figure out a way to like get more value from our product and our solution. The next thing, so with their webinar trainings and these workshops, so again, end users, they're not part of onboarding, right? And they struggled to connect the technology into the value. So for a lot of times it was like, okay, great. we've rolled out this new technology. My boss told me that we have to use this, and I'm fuzzy on the how, or I'm fuzzy on like, why. We needed to take control of that. And so maybe we're not doing it in a one-to-one, meaning that we're not doing each individual organization and training them, but this is a wonderful scaled program for us, right? Like, how do we train all of our customers and users together? And obviously there's nuances because every company is going to use the technology slightly different, but that's where the leaders should be leaning in, right? They should be saying like, okay, yeah, I get that the product does that, but we're actually not going to use it that way because our business is a little different. And so we're going to do these 3 things, but at least they have an understanding of the product, how to do it, and the value. The leaders should be leaning in with those nuances, right? Of why their business has to be a little bit different or why they want their team to do certain things a certain way. The next thing is with product releases. Gosh, I've seen, I have so many emails coming in from technology that I use, and it's like, new product update, new product update, new product update. Maybe I read it, maybe I don't. Maybe I watch the Loom video, maybe I don't. But then when I'm in the product, I'm like, oh, what is this thing? Or where did that thing go that I used to use? Right? So with the velocity that technology companies are releasing new innovation, it was so difficult to make sure that our customers, the end users, were really understanding what's new, why it's new, why we developed it, the value to them, how to use it, maybe how to configure it if it needed configuration. So bringing more of that to the front line as opposed to just isolating those conversations to admins. Customers need as much training about the industry as they do about the product. Right? So many times the value of partnering with a vendor is that you're going to bring more value outside of just your technology, right? Like you're an industry thought leader, right? You're designing technology to solve for things in my industry. You should know what's going on. Tell me, educate me, enable me. So your customers want to know, what you see. They want to hear patterns. They want to know what other customers are doing, what experiences they're having. You've got to share that information with them as well. It is not enough for you to just be experts in the product. You've got to go beyond that and be bringing more value to the partnership beyond your solution. And then leaders have challenges that they would like to brainstorm with other leaders. I hear this all the time. And that was a big theme that came up with our customer base is CS leaders wanted to connect with other CS leaders. I was helpful, but they want to talk to more people. They want to talk to other people that had similar workflows or similar challenges or similar org types. So it's important for us to figure out ways to really connect folks so they can have those shared experiences and conversations. So again, these are the things that I uncovered for my business, might be different for yours, but these are the types of things that you need to go and figure out and find out so you can solve for them. The last one was the support office hours. So one, we were finding that more of our customers needed assistance with technical integrations. I think that our solution integrates pretty easily, but it's not our product that I'm concerned about, right? If you're integrating with a CRM, like let's say Salesforce, Salesforce is so customizable. Everybody's deployment of Salesforce looks very different. I have never been to 2 different companies that I've worked at and said, oh my gosh, your Salesforce deployment looks exactly like where I was before. It's so different. So the integration is so specific. So I think it's really important to understand how we can help them. That was coming up, is that we needed to make sure that we're giving them more resources to help with this when they were getting stuck. Next is when product issues or experiences arise for users, it disrupts their workflow and it slows them down. So how could I help to help them in the moment where it didn't feel so disruptive or it didn't feel like it was taking forever? Or if they're trying to do something, I can hop on a call or I have access to an agent, or I know that the timeliness of the response is going to be higher. We need to solve for that, because every time somebody hits a roadblock with your product, they're taking a step back. Maybe I hit something and it wasn't working, and then I went on to the next thing. I stopped using your solution. Not that I stopped using it in perpetuity, but like in that moment, maybe I just stopped. And then with smaller teams and more customers using and adopting the platform, like the number of tickets submitted was increasing, right? If you've got, we're focused on driving adoption with end users, well, guess what? We also want to encourage our end users to have access to support. Well, with more access to support, more tickets arise. So how can I solve for this? So really just trying to solve the right problems that are going to help, again, drive retention, foster an environment that breeds success for my customers. So those were the 3 things that I said, you know what, these are things I'm going to tackle based off of the things that I observed in my customer base. And this is the type of stuff that I think is going to be helpful for you. So I do want to just make sure that we're all on the same page. Leading and lagging indicators, right? When we think about leading indicators, because this is the stuff that I was solving for, I stopped focusing on the lagging indicators. Yes, those are KPIs that I track, but those weren't the things that I was trying to influence. not at least with the programs, right? I wanted to move upstream. I wanted to solve the things at the beginning so that I didn't have to worry about negative outcomes at the end. So if I'm focusing on the metrics or the signals that happen before the specific situation does, I can fix that. I can solve it. I can intervene. That's what I wanted to do. Versus these lagging indicators, right, where I can't really change that. If your customer tells you they're moving to another solution, they're churning, they're unhappy, they're consolidating their tech stack, trying to win back a customer who's already mentally made that commitment, or maybe financially made a different commitment, you're not getting them back. So the more focus we put on the lagging indicators, the worse off we are from a strategy standpoint. Now, obviously, from a business metric standpoint, the KPIs we're looking at, yes, we're all tracking revenue, we're all tracking NRR and GRR and all those things. They're all great. They're all great. But they're lagging indicators, and I can't influence those if I don't focus on the leading indicators. So just make sure that as you think about these things, you're focused on the right things. So before we get into Q&A, and I do have 10 minutes left, so I did a good job on timing today, things I want you to just remember. So remember to review why your customers go and why they stay. Please do not hyper focus on just the churn reasons or why they're at risk or why they're unhappy. Please spend as much time with your happy customers and analyzing why they stay, why they renew. Go interview your customers. After they renew, send them a survey. If they sign a multi-year contract, that means they want to stay for longer. Send them a survey, interview them, hire a third party to go and have that conversation. Collect that information, because why they stay is as critical as why they go. Solve for your root causes, not the symptoms. Guys, stop focusing on the what's happening over here. Go deeper, figure out what is causing those symptoms and solve for that. Design programs that are going to help retain your customers, not stop them from churning. Just think about that for a second, right? I just kind of focus on programs that will retain your customers, not stop them from churning. We don't want to solve for right before you walk out the door. No, I want to solve for the things that are going to make you so happy and so successful that the idea of leaving us is not even a thought. Don't over-engineer this. You've got to move quickly. I don't know any company out there that's like, we've got all the time in the world. Just take your time, Kristi. Go figure out these strategies. We'll be here when you're ready. No, right? You've got to move quickly, but you don't want to over-engineer this stuff. Figure out some of the things that you can do with the resources you have. It does not need to be perfect. You just need to be making progress. And then lastly, define your early indicators so you can track them closely, right? We want to try to focus on the leading indicators, not the lagging indicators. So make sure that you have KPIs that you can actually assess early enough to say, this is working or this isn't working. We've got to pivot. So that's what I'm gonna leave you with today. I am gonna pause for a moment. We're gonna stop sharing the screen. We're gonna hop over to Q&A. So thank you all for staying with me as we went through this. I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment. I do not have a co-host, so I'm gonna take a moment and just take a sip of my tea, if you don't mind. Take a breath of air, and let's pull up some Q&A. So the first question, do you have any content or questions that will help you understand and analyze the stickiness of your product? There's a lot of, okay, I would say there's a ton of software out there. There's Pendo and Heap and other solutions out there. You've got to try to make some correlations between what you're seeing and behaviors and how your customers are using the product and some of those outcomes. So like I said, for us, we found that customers who used a very specific part of our product, and we found a couple other indicators based on our product usage, that all of our customers that stayed were doing certain things in our product. I think Slack had something that they referred to as their magic number, that they knew that the minute somebody who was using Slack sent X amount of Slacks, that they were a Slacker. Now they were somebody who was going to adopt their technology. You got to figure out what is that one thing? What's your magic number? What's your magic metric? What's that magic thing that your customers are doing that almost every time this customer does it, they're likely to stay? For us, it's a couple things, because, we are a platform and a solution. So it's more embedded, it's more integrated. So it's not just one thing, but it's one kind of scope of our product, but how it's integrated into their workflows. So I would say you've got to work to figure that out. I don't think that there is an easy answer for that, because everyone's product and your customers are pretty unique. The next one is, do you have concrete definitions of all of these success and risk data points? How do you get the data points for some of the more vague items like relationship? You may be addressing it soon, so disregard. Okay. Those are just the categories. So in those screenshots that I showed you of all those colored boxes, those are just the high level categories of those reason codes. So actually in client success, we create risk codes and we create success factors. And so when I drill down into those categories, I'm actually able to see all the subcategories. So for example, if it just said relationship, it could be access to leadership. It could be exec turnover. It could be main POC turnover. It could be, strong pre-existing relationship, whatever it could be, right? Like we've got an executive relationship there, or maybe like board member. So maybe there's something there in those subcategories, and that's the data that we're using for it. So under those big themes that you were seeing on my slide, there's actually a lot of sub data that lives within that. And that's the information that we were using to drive a lot of this analysis. So it's not so vague. It's not so broad. It's actually, we have very specific data as you drill down into those reports. Can you capture a customer pulse in a high scaled and low touch program? It depends for organizations. Like if you are in a higher engagement model, pulse for us and our product is a manual thing because you have a health score and that's collecting data and that's automatically going to be captured and updated, right? I always say that that's how your customers are behaving. Are they behaving like good customers? Pulse for us and the value from it is that it is human collected data because it's a sentiment about the partnership. It's what you're hearing from your customers. So we use both data points. So for example, we might have a customer who, from a health score standpoint, right, they're adopting, they're highly engaged, they're getting value, all these things. But we find out, oh, they were just recently acquired. From a pulse standpoint, I'm marking that customer to high risk because I know that my retention tied to M&A is tough. It's low. So for us, right, the value there is having that human sentiment because there is still value in humans. I know with AI, people are wondering if there's still value in us. Yes, we still have value. So for us, it's focusing more on adding that data point. Can you do that at scale? There's a lot of new AI and innovation, especially with all this call recording technology. So we use Update AI. We love it. Huge fan of their product. So if you're using it, it captures all of your customer recorded calls, it synthesizes it, it analyzes it, it gives you themes and calls out things that you should be concerning and that are at risk. There's probably a cool way, and we're working on integration right now with that to see if maybe that can be embedded to do something like that at scale. How and when is the pulse check done by CSMs? So for us, the way that I require it for my team, it's every time we engage with a customer, or at least updated every 30 days. So for example, if we did not connect with the customer this month, we should have enough context based off of what they're doing in the product or how they're using it or correspondence. We don't leave our customers unattended to for a month or over a month. So we've had interactions, we've had conversations with them, maybe it's over email. They're using the product a certain way. So I asked my team to always just keep it updated every 30 days. So that way I know that it's current and accurate, but they are required every time you interact with or have a call with a customer that pulse is updated. So that is our policy, is every 30 days, unless sooner if you've spoken with them a bunch of times. Another one here, how do you effectively gather and analyze early risk indicators to ensure a proactive approach to customer success? Every business is different, but so for us, I know now because of the data that we looked at in these lagging indicators and all the data I collected along the way that said, my customers, if they're not setting their goals very specifically so we can measure them and help them drive and articulate value internally in their business, that's going to be a gap for us. So in that example, Client Success is a goal tracking product. So what we're doing is we're looking at each of the goals that we've captured for those customers. If it meets the criteria, we know that we're on track and that we're probably going to be able to help deliver against that value. At least we know what that is. So we're using our goal reporting to actually track that as an early indicator. And so there's other things that we're looking at as well. Again, for you all, it depends on what those risk factors are and what those leading and lagging indicators are that you have to figure out for your business. I'm using just the one example that I had, which was I need to help my customers define and articulate a SMART goal around the partnership and about the business so we can actually have a real KPI and some scoping there so I can deliver on it. You might find other ones for your business or for your product, but that's how I'm using that one. And then I have a product in Client Success to track my goals over time and report on that. So that said, I'm not going to do any more because I do see that we've got a minute left, and so I don't want to run over. So I do want to just stop by thanking you all for joining me again for another week. Please remember, next week is our last session, so I hope you all will come back for our final installation in this series. Hopefully this was helpful. Like I said, the session 2 recording and material will be sent out today. This one, give us a day or two. This one will probably be sent out later this week, maybe like Thursday. I'll check with marketing. But hopefully you guys found this valuable. Again, the examples I use are the examples that I go through. These are my experiences, my information, but the idea here is to help you guys to think about your businesses the same way and go through your data so you can also drive the right strategies to help improve retention. So hopefully this was really helpful. Hopefully you'll come back for me because next week is our last week together, and then we will go on hiatus until next quarter, and I will miss you all very much in between. So I hope to see you all next week, same time, same place. Otherwise, I'm sure I'll see a lot of you on LinkedIn. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.